Good evening. Thank you for joining me here on the Royal House of Ra. I am your host, Amenhotep Khufu El Ra. Tonight's episode is episode 7, and we are discussing Dynasty I, in which I would read about the various pharaohs of Dynasty I, and hopefully that we can have a discussion here. I hope that everyone would tune in. Um, excuse me. We excuse we will. Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, so we would have the discussion. As I mentioned before, what was it? Last Friday, I had an issue with my computer. It kind of crashed out, and I was doing episode 5 at that time, which was about uh, pre-dynastic Kemet. Also, I wanted to mention here that on that particular video, YouTube had blocked it because they said there were some. You remember the video I had at the end that was going into detail about the pre-dynastic period. Well, they blocked me for because they said it was copyright infringement. So what I had to do with that video was edit the last portion of it, remove the video out, and I wasn't kicked off. But I'm also going to. I'm thinking about appearing on Pantheon and going there as well as doing it here on YouTube. I want to give a thank you to all my supporters who support the show, continue to support the show, uh, like the show, subscribe to the show, and hit that notification button so you know when new shows will appear. The next episode would be episode 8. That will be about Dynasty II, and we talk about the pharaohs from Dynasty II. That would appear this Saturday at 7 p.m. So look forward for that. Let's get into the show so we can move forward. All right, so I'm going to start with, with the first pharaoh of the of Dynasty I, and I hope I don't botch his name. Is Horra. The name of Number occurs on other objects, generally scratched on pottery and the like, and we can be sure that he was a historical personage. Horra is his successor and therefore probably his son, possibly by Queen Nephhotep, stood to inherit unified kingdom by right and by conquest. He took the Nepti name, the second royal name of men, which means establish, and this could be the origin of the latter record of the first king as being called Menes. For present purposes, we may look at Horra as the first king of the first dynasty. An interesting piece of evidence is a small broken ivory label found in the tomb of Queen Nephhotep at Naqada. Although some ceramic represented the busy scene on this tiny piece seems to show two humans celebrating a ceremony called receiving the south and the north over an unidentified object, possibly the first representation of their later symbolic trying of papyrus. and lotus stalks. The king's name meaning fighting hawk, an allusion again to Horus, indicates his upper Kemetic origins and rule. His adoption of Men as his Nepti name for ruling over both parts is indicated on the ivory label by the fact that his Horus name, his first and principal name, Horha, and his Nepti name, Men, appear side by side. Other similar small labels from early dynastic tombs indicate that his was not an easy reign. There were campaigns to be fought and rebels to be subdued in Nubia, recorded on a wooden label from Abydos, and another label records his foundation of a temple to the goddess Nith at Sussex in the Delta. Her warlike aspects was signified by a pair of cross arrows, and her worship continued into Roman times when she was identified with Athena at Salis. The founding of Memphis. Her greatest achievement was the founding of the capital city at Memphis, just south of Apex of the Delta. This was to endure throughout Kemet's history and become one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. The site was obviously chosen initially for its geographical and thus political importance in a newly unified country rather than its situation as a good building site, which was not. Herodotus records that Minos dammed the Nile just south of the future site of the city, diverting it so that he could build on the reclaimed land. A strict watch was kept on the dam. The Persians, he said, strengthened it every year because should it be breached, Memphis would have been overwhelmed. Recent deep soundings taken by the Kemet Egypt Exploration Society expedition to Memphis have shown that the course of the Nile has been gradually moving eastwards in historical times. According to Manetho, Hora, they're called Menes, reigned for 62 years and met his end when he was carried off by a hippopotamus. He must have been of a great age and presumably out hippopotamus hunting. The Palermo stone records a hippopotamus hunt in the reign of Udimu Den, later in the dynasty, and their savage attacks on crocodiles are represented in a number of reliefs in later Old Kingdom VI Dynasty tombs. After Memphis was founded, the early Kemetan kings began to construct their tombs at the sacred site of Abydos in Middle Kemet, and the nobles theirs on the edge of the desert plateau at at Sikhara, overlooking Memphis. Controversy has raged as to whether the king built at both sites. Archaeological evidence is quite scarce with regard to specific ambitions, since the structures at both sites were badly damaged and heavily robbed throughout the ages. Those at Abydos were literally ransacked by the Frenchmen, I can't pronounce this, and much evidence destroyed at the end of the last century. Flinders Patry took over the excavation and recording of the site, recovering plans of the early substructures and the merged yet often important leavings of the earlier robbers, such as the wood and ivory labels referred to. Professor W. B. Emery excavated the Sikhara site mainly between 1936 and 1956, except for the war years. He likewise found only pitiful remains of once fine funerary provisions. The tombs at Abydos and Saqqara are not decorated, so evidence of their owners can come only from material remains largely in the form of seal impressions rolled out from cylinder seals on the wet clay stoppers of wine jars and the like. They may have the name of the high officials responsible for the burial, on occasion a royal name, but it is not necessarily that of the tomb's occupant. In the light of recent analysis of the clay ceilings and the re-excavation of a number of the early tombs at Abydos by Professor G. Drewer of the German Archaeological Institute, Cairo Egyptological opinion now favors Abydos as being the site of the royal tombs. At Abydos, there is also now recognized from the latter pre-dynastic period a sequence of tombs that leads into the early royal tombs, and their evolution can be traced through the succeeding reigns. The large tombs at Saqqara are those of the nobles of the period. So mighty were some that it would seem they could, in several instances, emulate their royal masters and have satellites, sacrificial burials associated with their tomb. In the early cemetery at Saqqara, Emery located a large rectangular tomb that he ascribes to Hora, but his tomb is now B19 at Abydos. It had 27 storerooms at ground level for funerary equipment and 5 rooms below ground. The mud brick exterior was paneled all around in a style referred to as the Palace Facade, which is, which it resembles. This was to be copied later as a decorative element in jewelry. It is the lower half of the Sikhara, and for the first time in stone nearby in the third dynasty complex of Doja. On the north side of the structure, a brick-built pit had once held a wooden solar boat. At Abydos in October 1991, a fleet of 12 boats dating from about 3000 BC were found buried side by side. The boats, the oldest surviving large-scale vessels in the world, were up to 100 feet in length, and their superstructures had been protected by mud brick structures protruding slightly above the desert surface. Several individuals and now empty boat pits were later provided around the Great Pyramid at Giza in the Fourth Dynasty, and One discovered there in 1954 was found still to contain a wooden boat. All these boats and boat pits were presumably connected with royal funerary ritual, although their precise function remains unknown. Hora Tomb at Abydos, B19, is the largest in the northwestern section of the cemetery, and another tomb close by produced small labels with the name Berna Abib, literally sweetheart. It is possibly that the lady was Harhar's queen, and her name also appeared on items from Nakada, the site of the great tomb of his possible mother, Queen Nefertiti Hotep. Okay, so that's it. That's what's on about the first pharaoh of the first dynasty. I'm going to go on to other pharaohs, but this is, excuse me, this is important. We need to examine what were these pharaohs doing. What was it like during their reign? I know other people within Egyptology and what I consider, and also Kemetology, there's a battle because new evidence is coming out that a lot of these pharaohs have roots from the subcontinent. I'm not going to get too much into that. I know about that, but I want to stick more towards the history of it. The truth is coming to light. We need to have a stronger perspective of this, and I really want to hit this so we can have a clear understanding. I want to have some discussions on it. But as I stated before, I really want to focus on the rulership, the government, and the day-to-day life of the average Kemetic people during that time. And I'm not knocking others who follow things on their own personal journey or own spiritual journey with this. A lot of people like to focus too much, especially from the Kemetic community, on the spiritual side. There was more than just spiritual. There was other things they were doing. And this is what I want to get and focus on. So let's go on. Let's see. Now, this is going to discuss about the three pharaohs, Dejet, and Din. These are the pharaohs that came after Horah. So let me go into this. And then after this, we'll take a break. And then we go into, when we return from the break, we'll go and discuss the last pharaohs, which is Adnejeb, Sim, Market, and Qua. Okay, so let's get into this. Desha probably Methyl Atheros succeeded Horah and is said to have reigned for 57 years. Once more, we rely on the evidence of the ivory and wood labels from Abydos and Sikhara for information. The hieroglyphics, or better yet, the metaneta, on all these labels are at an earlier stage in the development of writing and are often difficult to make out and prevent us from being positive as to their full meaning. One of these, an example in ivory from Abydos, has 4 lines of characters, which include 2 ships, the sign for town, and Djeser's name in a Sikhara. It appears to record a visit to the northern delta cities of Butu, one of the early capitals of Kemet, and to Sasis, already noted for its temple to the goddess Nith. The other label bearing his name, which is wooden and comes from Sikhara, seems to record some kind of religious event that may have involved human sacrifice. In the early period of Kemetan history, sacrificial burial occurred as at the royal tombs of Ur in Mesopotamia, but this wasteful practice was soon abandoned and much later mummified figures called usurps were provided to perform the necessary menial tasks required in the next world. Around Djeser's large tomb at Abydos, Tomb Zero, were over 300 satellite burials of retainers whom had gone to the grave at the same time as the principal intimate. Some of these were provided with simple wooden coffins and grave markers. Military expeditions were obviously still necessary since a ceramic rock drawing near Watahafa shows enemies cast into the water beneath the keel of a ship, which another enemy is seen tied to the front of an Kemetan warship, just as Atmos, the admiral son of Ibana, describes in his later tomb at El Kab. To one side, Djeser's Horus name is inscribed within a circuit. Djeser's successor is generally given as Djedjet, also referred to as UIG, but it seems possible to judge from the size 144 by 52 feet, 43 by 16 meters, and location of a tomb in Sikhara, number 3503, and a large tomb at Abydos, Petros Tomb Y, that there was a queen who either reigned alone between them or was later regent for a short period. The name on the large stone grave still found at the Abydos tomb is Meredith, a first thought to be that of a king, but later identified as a queen, consort of Djeser. Her name has recently been found at Abydos on a clay seal impression that gives the name of the early kings in order from Nomer to Den, confirming her status and giving her the title of king's mother, presumably of Den, for whom she may have acted as regent during his minority. Around her Abydos tomb were 41 subsidiary burials of servants, the office of many of them in the queen's service being indicated by the grave contents. The Jet tomb at Abydos is Tomb Z. The one at Sikhara, number 3504, formerly ascribed to the king and virtually twice the size of the Abydos structure, is now recognized as that of the noble Sikham Ka, whose ceilings were much in evidence in the debris. There was a number of subsidiary, superficial, sacrificial burials made around both monuments. 174 at Abydos and 62 individuals burials at Sikhara. Digit Great Stone Funerary style from Abydos is a consummate piece of sculpture. The Sikhara Tomb of Sekhem Ka, number 3504, also produced surprises running around the outer edge of the palace. Facade was a low bench with a series of about bulls. Hold on. Series of about 300 clay bulls, heads modeled in relief, each provided with a pair of real bull, was a potent symbol of royalty, and it seems curious for it to be found decorating the pleth around a noble tomb, with the first king then, or Udemu, the historical record becomes stronger. There are many labels and inscriptions on stone vases which cite this king and events in his reign. There is also an interesting correlation across to the Palermo stone. We can identify then Udimu, his throne name Simti, as king of the two lands, with a king in the Abydos king list called Hesep Hepsepti. From here, we turn to Menethil for a correlation with the Uterus, with a reign of 20 years on the Palermo stone, with its annual records cite principal events. There are several which tally with similar events known for Den from surviving labels. Those on the Palermo stone relate to an unidentified king but runs sequentially for 14 years and appear to refer to the later years of the reign. There is a fair possibility, therefore, that the Palermo stone sequence relates to then and the subsequent listings to his successors. These we know to be Nidjib, Si Merket, and Qua, in that order, for they appear first following Den, name on an inscribed stone vase from the galleries beneath the step pyramids at Saqqara. This sequence takes us to the end of the First Dynasty and has recently been confirmed by the sequence given on a clay ceiling from Abydos. A particularly interesting ivory label from Abydos inscribed for Den, probably from a pair of sandals, records the first time of the smithing of the east, with Den shown mace upraised in the classic pharaonic posture. clubbing a foreign chieftain. This appears to correlate with the smithing of the troglodytes recorded on the Palermo stone as the second year written a second year within a sequence of 14 years of an unidentified king. Professor W.B. Emery found a tomb number 3035 at Sikhara in 1935 that, despite the numerous jar ceilings present of Himmakot, the king's great chancellor, was at first thought by many to be the tomb of the king Den, by virtue of its great size and the magnificent finds. The tomb has now been reassigned to Himmakot, although much destroyed the collection of objects recovered. The largest group of excavated early dynastic material was of supremely high quality. Den, Den's Abidas Tomb Z, 62 by 49 feet, 19 by 15 meters, was much smaller than the Sikhara tomb previously ascribed to him, 185 by 83 feet, 56 by 25 meters, and it had 174 satellite burials around it. On the grounds of architectural similarities, Emery considered that a badly destroyed tomb found at Giza, almost as large as Himmakot's at Saqqara, and which had the graves of sacrificed servants around it, might be the tomb of Den's queen, whose name is not known. Okay, so there you have it there. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go on a brief break, probably 3 minutes. This is a great time to stretch, go to the bathroom, get some water, whatever you want to do. Take some time to do that. Before I go to the break, please share this content, like the show. I need your support. I need you to hit that like button because this really helps my standing here, and also hit the subscribe button and hit the notification button so you know when new shows appear. So we're going to go on a brief 3-minute break here. Okay. All right. To the show right now. So hope you enjoyed your break here. All right. So let's get in and read about the final kings of the first dynasty and find out what was going on with them and learn uh, what was going on at that time. Um, as I mentioned before, there's going to be like some pharaohs from certain dynasties that's just there's not a lot of information on them, so there's very few information about them. But that's okay. At least we know something. Um, Hopefully, we can dig further to find out more about them. Uh, but that's okay. We'll make it through. All right, so let me get in it now. The last kings of the first dynasty, which is Anajib, Sinmarket, and Kwa. So let's read about these uh, dynastic kings here of the first dynasty. The next king of the first dynasty reigned for 26 years. If we identify Anajib with the Maibidas of Manetho, there is some evidence at this period of a dynastic struggle of north versus south. Anajib seems to have come from the area of Abydos known as this and is recorded as a Thinite king on the Sikhara kings list from the tomb of Thunari. Many stone vases bearing his name had their inscriptions erased under his successor Simarket, who was himself omitted from the Sikhara list. The Sikhara tomb of the noble Nipitika, previously ascribed to Anajab, number 38, has an interesting architectural feature also present in the earlier Sikhara tomb of Queen Mernith, concealed with the normal rectangular palace facade. Mastakapa was the base of a stepped structure, a curious juxtaposition of two quite different forms. In an Arabic word for bench given to the earlier tombs, since their low flat form resembles the bench found outside the door of village houses, possibly here and in the tomb of Meredith, we have the beginning of the fusion of southern and northern styles that was to lead ultimately to the step pyramid. Anajib's tomb at Abydos Tumex is one of the worst built and smallest amongst the Abydos royal tombs. A mere 53 by 3/4 by 29.5 feet, 16.4 by 9 meters, although it had a burial chamber constructed entirely in wood. The surrounding 64 graves of retainers were also of low standard. The next king, Sennacherib, reigned for 9 years according to the Palano stone, or 18 according to Manetho, who notes that there were numerous disasters during the reign. These may have been connected with the problems in relation to his predecessor, it having been suggested that Sennacherib was, in fact, a usurper because he erased the name of his predecessor from stone vase and was himself omitted from the Sikhara king list. His tomb at Abydos, Tomb U, measures 95 by 101.34 feet, 29 by 31 meters, and a vastly superior in size and quality to that of his predecessor, with its brick lined burial chamber and the well built servant graves. Usually, no large tomb has been identified at Saqqara to his reign. Okay. The last king of the first dynasty, Qua Hijat, may have reigned for 26 years, but Manetho name of by Benich, whom he gives as the last king of the dynasty, hardly equates with Qua. A large tomb found at Saqqara by Emery in 1954, number 3505, was ascribed to Qua, but we now believe it to be that of a priestly noble, Merkah, whose large limestone still, giving his name and titles, has one of the largest texts extant from the period. The size of the tomb, 213 by 121 feet, 65 by 37 meters, was such that it led Emery to suggest that Murkoch had been granted the honor of burial close to his royal master. The large tomb of Qua at Abydos, Tomb Q, was re-excavated in 1993 by the German Archaeological Institute, Cairo. They revealed that the tomb had been subject to numerous alterations and enlargements, starting from a simple brick-lined burial chamber, small by Saqqara comparison, only 98 and a half by 75 and a half feet, 30 by 23 meters. It also had a lesser number of satellite burials, only 26. It is notable that the practice of satellite sacrificial burials seems to have stopped in Qua's reign in the north, although some are still present, but not in such vast quantities in the south at Abydos. Perry assigned the tomb at Abydos to Qua not only from the usual jar ceilings, but also from two fragmentary stills he found on the east side of the tomb that gave Qua's Horus name in a Sikrat, a superb limestone still of the king acquired by the Lever in 1967 shows him wearing the tall white crown of Upper Kemet and embraced by the falcon-headed Horus. The white crown also formed part of his name within the Sekhet above the two heads, possibly indicating the final triumph of the South Abydos. A change of dynasty normally indicates a break in the line of the ruling house. Yet Manetho tells us that the kings of the second dynasty also came from this, being Thinite kings from near Abydos, as were the last kings of the first dynasty. Okay, there you have it. Uh, discuss about Qua, who was the last pharaoh of the first dynasty. But they also indicating that the kings of the second dynasty, there is a relation there between the two because they come from the same region, and they could be an extension into that dynasty. But we're going to go into that further in episode 8, which we focus on Dynasty 2. There's only 5 kings in Dynasty 2. Let me I can show you this. This is the next dynasty here, Dynasty 2. So those are the kings of the Dynasty 2 there. So I hope you enjoy tonight's show, and the next show will air this Saturday, which would be the 5th, I believe. So we're going to look forward for that. I hope you will join me with that. But remember, subscribe, hit that notification, share, and like. So I'd like to thank all of you for your support. Continue your support of the show, and good evening.